Every year, someone finishes as a wide receiver 1 overall, and most years the guy was hiding in plain sight. But every now and then, there's a guy that none of us saw coming, a true dark horse. This year, it might be DJ Moore, and he's going in round 5. The guys in this range are like DK Metcalf, Cortland Sutton, Devonta Smith, and I keep staring at this group, wondering how DJ Moore ended there. Because on paper, it looks like safety, but it didn't feel like it. He only gave you 4 top 15 weeks all year. That's not safety, that's just kind of showing up. The new staff hasn't locked him into a role just yet. They're talking about moving guys around and still figuring it out. The quotes are actually kind of annoying. And fantasy owners were still chasing that ceiling from Adunze. They drafted Burden and Loveland, and everyone's acting like DJ Moore still isn't the best wide receiver on the team. And I get it, he ran the 4th most routes in football and somehow averaged the fewest air yards per target of his entire career. The volume was there, the juice was not. So now I'm stuck between 2 pictures. One where Moore is just a floor play, slow, steady, forgotten. And one where the most talented pass catcher in a totally rebuilt offense is getting drafted behind guys who haven't even played an NFL snap. But the real edge is I don't think people realize how much better this offensive line is for Chicago now. Arguably the most improved offensive line in the league going into 2025. And I keep going back to it, DJ Moore, 98 catches last year. That was the most of his career, but you go watch the routes and it's like all screens, crosses, like these short little outs. Everything inside like 5 yards. And that'd be fine if he did anything with them, but Moore ranked 29th in route win rate, and his deep targets just 13 all year, lowest since his rookie season. For a guy that used to be top 10 in yak, that's not a usage shift, that's kind of just a downgrade of the offense in general. And then there's this, when your head coach has to pull you aside just to tell you to show more energy on the field, that's not motivation, that's frustration. He just looked like a little bit more of a cancer than we'd like to admit at times last year. But it was his OC, his wide receiver coach, and his QB all hyping him up this offseason. And that's the part that I still can't get past, despite Moore saying that he's not exactly sure what his role is going to be. The Bears did vacate 120 targets that Keenan Allen left behind. That's not normal. So DJ Moore's just there waiting, severely underpriced in fantasy. As the most talented pass catcher on a team that just lost his top target earner, even if he wasn't explosive. Trust me, I still want Adunze to happen as well. I'm with you there. And yet, Moore should be the answer. Yet, he's kind of the biggest question mark, but that goes both ways. This might look really bad, or he could go completely nuts and be the wide receiver 1 overall in fantasy. We've seen the explosion before. So it's not like we're making up this hypothetical ceiling for DJ Moore. But the thing that finally made it click was realizing Ben Johnson isn't just rebuilding Detroit's offense in Chicago, he's doing kind of the opposite. In Detroit, they protected Jared Goff, play action, checkdowns, short reads. But in Chicago, it seems like Johnson's installing a new system that leans more into that chaos, more early down throws, more over the middle designs, and a little bit more responsibility to the quarterback. We'll see if Caleb Williams can handle it, because Ben Johnson's not designing this offense to hide him, that's for sure. Maybe it unleashes him, we'll see. To be fair, Moore admits that he wasn't even fully locked in towards the end of last year. Obviously the coaches knew it, we knew it watching on the sidelines, and he still posted borderline wide receiver 1 numbers, so in some ways that feels like a positive. Guy that wasn't completely locked in still gave us a lot of fantasy production. That's not wide receiver 2 usage, that's alpha treatment, and it's only getting more intentional, because now he's got an OC that's going to hold him accountable, a QB that trusts him, and a yak for a system built for guys just like him. Maybe this is the year the offense finally reflects who he actually is. Look, I'm not pretending that DJ Moore is a lock to be the wide receiver 1 overall, not by a long shot, but I keep coming back to that his upside cannot be ignored. He's been the best receiver on a Bears team that's in flux. To me, it feels a little bit like a turning point. And Moore's going in round 4, sure, but that could be the price of drafting a true dark horse wide receiver 1 overall that wins leagues, and no one saw it coming. And honestly, that's enough for me to keep him in play in this range. And pray. Essentially, that's the story of a guy who's all talent but still searching for a true role. Now imagine someone who's flown under the radar, quietly proving they belong, and might just be ready to break out in a big way. But real quick, if you're serious about actually beating your friends this year, go to fantasyaccelerator.com or hit the first link below. You'll get instant access to my 2025 draft kit, rankings, sleepers, busts, cheat sheets, the same system over 12,000 players used last year to dominate drafts and steamroll their league. But here's the deal, I'm keeping it limited this year, so the real ones inside actually get my full attention. You'll see on the next page how many spots are left, but when it's full, that's it. And the price is going up later this month no matter what, so now is the time to lock in. I used to think Jameson Williams was just this gimmick player. He's a guy that runs fast, clears out space, maybe hits a deep shot now and then. But I'm looking at the tape again and it's messing with me a little bit, because if that was the floor, what happens if they build this entire offense around him? He's going in the 6th round, wide receiver 28 on most boards, right next to Zay Flowers and Xavier Worthy or Travis Hunter, a rookie that hasn't proved anything at the NFL level yet. And I'm sitting there thinking that we just watched Jameson go for over 1,000 yards and 7 scores, and somehow he's still the one being treated like a gimmick, a gadget player, a one-trick pony. And that's the part that I can't shake, because the price really hasn't moved. Not after the role shift, not even after they started installing new formations to isolate him downfield, which clearly worked. And that's when the tension starts to build, because the more I dig in, the more it feels like he finally earned it. The deeper I get into this Detroit offense, the more like it feels like we're standing on a trap door though. It makes me a little bit nervous. Maybe we start to see some regression after Ben Johnson leaves. New OC, Never fun, especially for teams that we loved last year in fantasy. But I keep circling back to one thing. Detroit didn't just leave Jamo on the field, they built the offense around him at points of last year. His average depth of target dropped from 16 to 11.6. A lot of times we would think that that's not a good thing. This really just means they were trying to get the ball in his hands more often. It's not some sort of tweak, it was more of like a schematic shift that they made to make sure that he was a part of the game plan. They fed him like these screens, jet motions, drags across the middle, like they were finally done pretending that he's just a deep threat. And it worked. 11.4 yards per target, not air yards, not fantasy points per touch, actual target efficiency, real world value. But here's where it gets slippery. That efficiency bump didn't show up until after Sam Laporta's usage started crashing. Through week 11, Laporta was averaging over 7 targets per game, then Jamo's snap share spiked, and Laporta's targets dropped to just 3.1 per game the rest of the way. So I'm stuck on this question, was Jamo breaking out, or was Detroit just filling a void? Because on paper, he hit 70+% of the snaps in 14 games. That's full-time usage. His target per out rate was just 18.4%, which isn't great, but he's not a dart throw anymore. He's still a bet, mostly because the guy who designed this offense around him, Ben Johnson, is gone. He's been replaced by John Morton, a 57-year-old with 0 top 12 finishes as a play caller, but if Morton can't keep the pace high in Detroit and Goff starts feeling the pressure behind a downgraded interior line, the manufactured volume for Jamo might dry up a little bit. That's what makes me nervous. So the range of outcomes is super large here, and that's what we're talking about, because this whole thing could unravel super fast, because when I look at Jameson's breakout, I just don't see a player who's earned more touches. I see a team that gave it to him. I'm not sure the new one knows how to do that. We'll see. But the thing that finally got me was when I started to rewatch some of his targets from last year, not the touchdowns, not just the routes, just how they were kind of using him, trying to get him in space. One snap, they motioned him across the formation, and the very next play, Gibbs had a free release underneath. So they're almost using him to free up other people in the offense as well, because you have to respect his deep speed. So it's not like I think he's some sort of decoy, but how they were using him does make a lot of sense. They don't want to just force it to Gibbs. They're using Jameson to kind of break the structure in general. But we'll see if this new OC can unlock him in the same way, because by the end of the year, Jameson wasn't just getting reps. He wasn't just out there running sprints. He was running routes from every alignment, slot, outside, in motion, 2 wide receiver sets. So he didn't have to dominate targets. He just had to be on the field long enough to get some looks. And if that's true, wide receiver 28 isn't the bet. It's the tax for realizing it too late, because I didn't come in thinking that Jameson could be the guy in fantasy, the wide receiver 1 overall. But the deeper I looked, the harder it is to ignore that the ceiling is really uncapped if things break right. Because when you step back, this is the exact role where breakout wide receivers always come from. Not the volume hog, the guy who lifted the defense, break coverages, and hits just enough big plays to matter every single week in fantasy. And that's what stuck with me. It doesn't matter if he's the first read, if he's not the star. Obviously, Amon-Ra isn't gonna just go away. But Jamo wasn't the star last year. He still cleared 1,000 yards. He was still pulling safeties. He still cracked this offense wide open when it needed him the most. So I'm not saying that the wide receiver 1 overall is likely. I'm just saying that this is the type of profile that can sneak up on people once in a while in fantasy. Because if there's one dark horse who could actually finish as the wide receiver 1 overall in fantasy, it's probably the one that we already saw was completely unguardable. All right, we know Jamo's efficiency screams upside, but what about the boomer bust deep threat that's landing in a new offense that could change everything? But real quick, if you're not ready for the full draft kit yet, you can still get my top 150 rankings totally free at top150free.com. It's the exact list that I'm using in every draft this year, and odds are at least one of your league mates already has it. But if they do and you don't, you're gonna feel it by round 3. So grab yours now, takes 30 seconds, it might save your whole draft. I told myself that I was done betting on deep ball guys that show up for 2 plays a game, the ones that scorch defenders and then vanish when you need them most. But now, George Pickens is in Dallas with Dak Prescott, one of the best deep passers in the NFL. And somehow the ADP is the same as it was last year, so I'm staring down the same risk with a shot at the biggest payoff we've ever seen. He's going in round 6, the exact spot where wide receivers with upside live and die. The price feels like a hedge because Pickens is no sure thing. He's leaving an offense that barely threw 430 passes last year and stepping into a Cowboys team that launched nearly 500 attempts when Dak was healthy, and they were the league's fastest paced offense behind only Washington. But what I keep coming back to is Dak's deep ball rating ranks 4th in the NFL since 2016. His accuracy on throws with 20+ yards downfield sits 8th overall. That's not a small upgrade, that's a seismic shift. You guys remember what Pickens did with Russell Wilson, another great deep ball thrower last year, right? The only thing that was missing was an offense that could actually be consistently good. You know what uplifts an offense into being consistently good? An elite wide receiver 1, like CeeDee Lamb. He's commanded like 1/3 of the targets for what feels like forever in Dallas. And these boomer bust guys like Pickens have definitely burned me more than once. But hear me out. Am I drafting a legitimate dark horse wide receiver 1 with massive upside, or just a cleaner version of the same wild card that I've been chasing for 3 seasons? The real details that cut deep are pretty obvious though. Pickens just loves when defenders get physical with him. Shout out Matt Harmon's reception perception, 77.6% success rate against press coverage. That's in the 83rd percentile overall. It's actually pretty rare to have a wide receiver that's going to fight that hard at the line of scrimmage, and it's exactly what Dallas needs to kind of draw coverage away from CeeDee Lamb. They need someone to pull double teams and carve out some space. Pickens is like that classic wide receiver who absolutely crushes in man coverage, but isn't near as good in zone coverage, and it's because he wants to get physical. He wants to be that guy that can get contested catches downfield. The routes like over the middle, the quick intermediate ones that kind of build that week-to-week consistency in fantasy, that's kind of where he struggles the most. And it's where we've kind of seen his effort drop off a little bit as well. So we'll see if a new change of scenery can help there. I'm hopeful that it will. Because there's weeks where he's a human highlight reel, and then there's weeks where he completely disappears. Kind of like the Pittsburgh offense though. But Dallas, on the other hand, there's a lot of bull signals here. The first one that I think about is just how fast-paced this offense is in general. Top 2 in the league. Nearly 500 pass attempts last season, almost 100 more than Pittsburgh. So more snaps, more chances, more targets, doesn't have to be the alpha, all good things. But somehow Pickens' draft price hasn't moved, still slotted right into round 6, same wide receiver 3 tier, and every time I think of Dak, I pinpoint that deep accuracy that he has, that sheer volume of throws that he's going to launch downfield. And yet I can't shake that this could be a bit of a roller coaster. So you kind of just have to know what you're getting into with this one, I think. He's either going to be one of the most explosive players in fantasy, and this price tag is going to look ridiculous in week 2, or maybe he's just not what we thought he was. But the moment that cracked this whole thing wide open for me was looking closer at the coaching shift. This offense wasn't a run-first offense like we expected it might be last year. So that volume bump that we're going to get in passing is absolutely huge. So when it finally hit me, it's that Pickens isn't just chasing volume here, it's chasing opportunity that finally fits his strengths. So this isn't about Pickens needing to change, it's about the market finally waking up on what's been possible this whole time with this player. And I'm not saying that Pickens is a sure thing, wide receiver 1 overall, but I am saying that he has that upside, because the upside is huge. Massive. We talked about the elite physical traits that make him a nightmare at the line. We talked about Dak's pinpoint accuracy downfield and the exact type of environment that should help him hit his ceiling. That's the kind of dark horse story that wins leagues and breaks expectations, and it's enough for me to try and draft Pickens as much as humanly possible, just for that shot of the biggest payoff in fantasy this year.